Have you ever left a weekend event, like a really high-stakes conference, an intensive seminar, maybe a retreat, and just felt like a completely new person?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have all been there at some point.
Right. You walk out of those convention center doors,
Yeah.
you know, utterly convinced your life has just changed forever. Your notebook is completely overflowing with these revolutionary ideas.
And your phone is probably packed with photos of presentation slides that, let's be honest, you're never going to look at again.
Yes, you have already mentally reorganized your entire future. You feel this overwhelming sense of possibility. But then you find yourself in the exact same routine just 1 week later.
Like clockwork.
The notebook stays closed, the new habits completely dissolve, and you are effectively the exact same person you were before you bought the ticket.
It is so common. And the contrast between that intense Sunday afternoon inspiration and the inevitable Wednesday morning reality represents one of the most fascinating paradoxes in behavioral psychology.
Which is exactly what we are going to explore in this deep dive.
We witness this profound disconnect between the internal sensation of transformation and the external physical evidence of change. Basically, your brain entirely convinces you that the transformation is complete, despite zero material alteration to your daily life.
I mean, we really need to unpack why the human brain so consistently mistakes the mere anticipation of success for actual achievement, and why feeling deeply inspired rarely translates into permanently transforming your behavior.
It is a critical gap to understand.
Because leaving a high-energy conference, it is remarkably similar to experiencing a massive sugar rush.
That is a great analogy.
It's intense, it makes you feel immensely powerful in the moment, but it is biologically designed to be temporary. The crash you feel on Tuesday, that is not a failure of character, It is a programmed physiological response.
It really is. And we can observe this biological reality in the immediate aftermath of any powerful learning experience. Think about the morning after you return from a major event.
You wake up feeling invincible.
Exactly. You wake up earlier than usual. You consume dense educational content instead of mindlessly scrolling through social media. You might even adopt a different vocabulary, kind of mimicking the speakers you just heard.
You genuinely feel as if your old self has been permanently discarded.
But it hasn't.
No, it hasn't. We can call this specific emotional high the Faded Masterclass Dopamine. It is this temporary neurochemical state produced by intense learning environments.
And it is very deceptive.
Highly deceptive. It effectively tricks us into believing we have already achieved a transformation simply because we feel deeply inspired. The inspiration heavily masks the complete lack of physical execution.
Well, the underlying mechanics of this illusion, they trace directly back to how the brain processes novelty and anticipation.
Okay, let's get into the science of that.
A common misconception about human motivation is the belief that it is solely generated by visible, measurable progress.
Like checking things off a list.
Right. But in reality, the human brain favors novelty significantly more than it favors discipline. Seminars, masterminds, workshops, they are explicitly engineered to overwhelm your sensory inputs with novelty.
Everything is new.
Everything. You're surrounded by new ideas, new peer groups, new physical environments, and these new compelling narratives of success. The brain interprets this massive influx of novelty as a landscape incredibly rich with opportunity.
So the reward system just lights up in response to the environment itself. I mean, the lights, the music, the charismatic delivery, it all acts as a trigger, doesn't it?
It becomes entirely hyperactive. It floods your neural pathways with dopamine. But crucially, the brain releases this dopamine not because you have achieved something difficult or meaningful, but because it is anticipating a future reward.
Anticipating, not achieving.
Exactly. Behavioral scientists clearly distinguish between reward prediction and reward acquisition. Dopamine is not the molecule of reward, as many people think. It is the molecule of pursuit and anticipation.
Wow. So it rewards the chase.
Yes. When you sit in that conference room and listen to a visionary speaker, your brain is celebrating the possibility of your future success before you have executed a single challenging task. It enjoys the vivid imagination of the future almost as much as actually living it.
But wait, I have to challenge the utility of that mechanism for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
If visualizing success and anticipating a better future releases massive amounts of dopamine, I mean, that must fundamentally be a positive evolutionary trait, right?
In a historical context, yes.
It drives human beings to build, to explore, to plan for tomorrow. Dopamine makes the early human walk 10 miles to find a fruit tree they merely suspect is there.
That is absolutely true.
So at what specific point does the brain's love for imagining the future cross the line? When does it become an actual liability for modern progress?
That is the million-dollar question. The liability emerges the exact moment anticipation becomes an end in itself.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when the dopamine hit derived from predicting the reward becomes so deeply satisfying that it replaces the drive to actually acquire the reward, we encounter a serious behavioral trap.
Oh, I see.
The pursuit of self-improvement mutates into a highly sophisticated form of entertainment. The brain essentially short-circuits. It realizes it can get the chemical reward of feeling successful simply by consuming content about success.
Completely bypassing the biological tax of hard labor.
Precisely. Why do the hard work when a podcast gives you the same chemical reward?
I mean, that perfectly explains the modern landscape of personal development.
Yeah.
People now binge productivity videos the exact same way previous generations binge television sitcoms.
It is the exact same consumption habit.
Instead of collecting movies, we collect productivity frameworks. Instead of gossiping about celebrities, we debate the merits of different mental models and intricate morning routines.
It feels like work, but it isn't.
Exactly. The actual process of learning efficiently becomes a highly disguised, highly sophisticated form of procrastination. We feel productive while achieving nothing.
There is an older concept from Peter Drucker that applies beautifully here.
The one about useless efficiency.
Right. His famous observation that there is nothing quite so useless as doing efficiently what should not be done at all.
But today, we almost have to update that concept for the information age.
We do. Today the rule is, there is nothing quite so deceptive as learning efficiently what you never intend to practice.
That is so powerful.
Yeah.
Because it really is deceptive.
And we are witnessing the direct application of hedonic adaptation to motivation.
Hedonic adaptation. Break that down for the listener.
Hedonic adaptation is the psychological process where humans rapidly return to a relatively stable baseline level of emotion, regardless of major positive or negative events. Your brain inherently seeks homeostasis.
It wants to balance things out.
Exactly. So when we apply this to inspirational content, repeated exposure actively reduces its emotional impact.
Meaning the second time you hear a great idea, it doesn't hit as hard.
Right. You consume a life-changing framework for the first time, you feel the massive dopamine spike, but you take no action. The brain maps that territory. The next time you need that feeling, the exact same framework will not produce the same chemical release.
So you essentially build up a tolerance to inspiration, just like a tolerance to caffeine.
You build a profound physiological tolerance. You begin requiring bigger events to feel the same baseline high. You seek out more charismatic speakers, more exclusive communities, and significantly higher ticket prices.
Not for better information, but for a bigger hit.
You are not seeking these things because they produce demonstrably more practical value. You are chasing the initial emotional state you experienced the very first time you felt genuinely inspired.
The inspiration itself has become the consumer product.
And execution has become entirely optional. The brain is continually seeking the novelty of the aha moment.
You know, if you are listening to this, you might recognize this phenomenon in other areas of life, not just seminars. It reminds me of building an incredibly elaborate state-of-the-art home gym.
Oh, that is a perfect example.
You spend thousands of dollars buying the heaviest kettlebells, the most expensive power rack, pristine rubber flooring. You assemble it all, step back, and look at this immaculate space.
And you feel great about it.
You feel a massive surge of athletic accomplishment. Your brain processes the purchase and the assembly as a legitimate fitness victory. Yet you have not actually lifted a single weight.
Not one.
You bought the identity of an athlete, but the equipment sits there gathering dust while you browse catalogs for even more gear to recapture that feeling of health.
The home gym analogy isolates the critical difference between establishing an environment and establishing an identity.
Which are two very different things.
Very different. Purchasing the equipment generates a feeling of safety and preparedness. You can buy the equipment over a single weekend, just as you can attend a transformational seminar over a weekend.
But a weekend doesn't make an identity.
No. The seminar will undoubtedly generate breakthroughs in your cognitive understanding. The underlying problem is that breakthroughs rarely mature into permanent identities on their own.
Because identity change requires work.
It requires rigorous, prolonged, and often incredibly boring repetition.
Let us examine that transition from the internal brain chemistry to the external physical surroundings. If you attend a rigorous fitness seminar, by Sunday evening, you genuinely believe you are a dedicated athlete.
You are completely sold on it.
The new identity feels completely secure. Yet by Wednesday morning, the alarm goes off and you are hitting snooze and skipping the workout.
The reality check.
Right. The internal motivation inevitably fades because of the hedonic adaptation we just discussed. But why does the newly adopted identity vanish so rapidly in the face of reality?
The identity vanishes because it lacks any infrastructural foundation.
What does that mean structurally?
It means your calendar still entirely belongs to your old identity. Your peer group continues to reinforce your old habits. The physical and social environment you return to implicitly rewards your previous behavior.
So your whole life is pulling you backward.
Yes. Behavioral scientists refer to this invisible gravitational pull as environmental inertia.
Environmental inertia.
The harsh, unavoidable reality of human behavior is that external systems are fundamentally stronger than internal emotions.
Wow. Systems beat emotions.
Every time. Daily routines, deeply carved neural pathways, and established physical environments will consistently overpower temporary spikes in motivation. The seminar effectively upgraded your internal thoughts, but your external life continued reinforcing your past.
If systems and environments consistently defeat emotions, is the excitement generated by a high-stakes mastermind fundamentally useless? I mean, are people wasting their time and money attending these events? Or is this excitement just a powerful resource that people are completely misapplying?
The excitement is absolutely not useless. It is simply raw, unrefined fuel. Yes. The excitement is highly potent, but it requires a very specific translation mechanism to survive the crushing weight of environmental inertia. Unrefined fuel will burn out quickly if it is not captured by an engine.
So how do we build that engine?
We can observe a distinct divergence in behavior when we deeply study high performers versus the general population in the immediate aftermath of these events.
Right, because high performers operate on a completely different set of questions.
They do.
When the average attendee leaves the seminar, they ask, "What did I learn?" They review their notes looking for feelings of inspiration, trying to re-experience the dopamine hit of the weekend.
They are chasing the ghost of the event.
Exactly. But high performers never ask what they learned. They ask what changes tomorrow morning.
That is the pivotal shift.
They do not leave the venue with 20 abstract, floating ideas. They distill an entire weekend of intense, overwhelming learning down into one visible, scheduled behavior.
They create behavioral anchors.
Let's talk about behavioral anchors.
Behavioral anchors act as the translation mechanism we just discussed. Instead of drafting a 20-page manifesto for a completely new life, which, by the way, is just another form of dopamine seeking, the high performer establishes a microsystem.
Something incredibly small but real.
Exactly. They commit to spending the first 30 minutes of every workday applying one specific framework they acquired, or they schedule a recurring Friday review to implement exactly one new idea.
So they tie it to a specific time and place.
The crucial discussion is that the learning becomes objectively scheduled rather than mere subjectively remembered.
Because memory is flawed.
Human memory is notoriously unreliable. It is heavily influenced by mood, fatigue, and blood sugar levels. Calendars, by contrast, are objective, relentless, and completely immune to your emotional state.
This highlights the philosophy of capturing decisions rather than merely capturing notes.
I love that distinction.
Because the vast majority of people, they fill these expensive notebooks with inspiring quotes and complex theories. But notes merely preserve information. Decisions actually change trajectories.
Absolutely.
A notebook should contain irreversible commitments. The most effective conference notes do not summarize what the speaker said. They dictate exactly how your calendar will be rewritten the following week.
Which brings us to the most critical window of time in behavioral change.
The 24-hour rule.
The 24-hour rule is a biological necessity given everything we now know about dopamine decay and environmental inertia.
How does it work?
The principle dictates that you must take one real physical action before the initial dopamine wave dissipates. If the conference ends on Saturday afternoon, you must execute a physical action before Sunday evening.
And it can't just be planning, right?
No. This cannot be a planning session, a brainstorming activity, or organizing your notes. It must be an irreversible action in the real world that signals to your brain that the environment is actually changing.
So you send the difficult email to a client. You publish the article you have been drafting. You launch the landing page and make it public.
Exactly. You put something out there.
You physically create momentum in the real world, forcing the environment to react to you.
Action is the only mechanism capable of converting temporary emotional energy into permanent behavioral evidence.
Behavioral evidence, that's a great term.
Once you have behavioral evidence, you no longer rely solely on the memory of the feeling. You have physical proof of your new identity.
You can point to it.
Yes. You can look at the published article or the sent email and say, I am a person who executes. This rewires the brain based on evidence rather than mere anticipation.
Because the alternative is incredibly tragic, honestly. Waiting converts excitement into nostalgia.
Nostalgia is the enemy of progress here.
It really is. That is the precise, invisible moment when a genuinely transformational masterclass is quietly downgraded into merely a pleasant memory.
It becomes just a story you tell.
You look back fondly on how inspired you felt in that convention center, rather than looking around at how much your life has materially changed.
And we must also address the long-term mechanics of sustaining this shift once the 24-hour window closes and the initial action is taken.
Because the motivation won't last forever.
Eventually, you will face the total loss of the emotional soundtrack. The music from the event stops. The charismatic speakers go home.
The real world hits hard.
The massive error participants consistently make is allowing the structural support of the event to completely evaporate. The immersive community dissolves, all external accountability vanishes, and normal mundane life floods back in.
So how do the most successful individuals combat this inevitable decay?
They construct what we can call the after mastermind.
The after mastermind.
Instead of participating in endless post-event discussion groups where people nostalgically reminisce about their favorite lectures, they form strict implementation groups.
So it's not a book club.
Not at all. The focus entirely narrows to a single, relentless metric of execution. The only acceptable question in an after mastermind is, what did you implement this week?
That is ruthless. I love it.
The group does not care what new book you read, what podcast inspired you, or what theory you are pondering. They demand undeniable evidence of execution.
And there's a sociological reason why that works, isn't there?
Yes. This taps into the profound sociological mechanics of human behavior. Evolutionarily, human beings are tribal creatures. We are hardwired to care deeply about our standing within a group.
We don't want to be cast out.
Exactly. The fear of social exclusion or failing to meet group expectations is processed in the brain very similarly to physical pain.
So you are effectively outsourcing your willpower to the collective expectation of the group.
You are manufacturing external pressure to replace internal motivation.
That is brilliant.
When you commit to an implementation group that you will launch a website by Friday, your brain perceives failure to do so as a legitimate social threat.
It feels like a survival issue.
This external social pressure acts as a powerful bridge. It sustains your new habits during the highly vulnerable period when your internal motivation inevitably drops to zero.
Which it always does.
Always. But if you maintain the behavior long enough through this manufactured social pressure, the habits physically solidify in your neural pathways.
They become automatic.
The habits eventually replace the need for motivation entirely. You just do the work because it is Tuesday, not because you feel inspired.
The true value of a conference, then, is purely exposure.
Just exposure.
It exposes you to new possible identities, new standards of excellence, and frameworks you simply did not know existed. However, its ultimate purpose is solely to provide enough initial velocity to escape your current environmental inertia.
It is the escape velocity.
It gives you just enough momentum to survive the transition period until sheer discipline and systemization can take over the wheel. We are constantly drawn to the most dynamic, loudest voices on stage. But the future rarely belongs to the most inspired person in the room.
It almost never does.
The future belongs to the person who quietly executes long after everyone else has stopped talking about the event.
It requires a profound shift in perspective regarding how we consume information. You must stop viewing inspiration as the vehicle that will carry you to your destination.
It's not the car.
No, you must start viewing it merely as the spark plug. The spark plug ignites the fuel, but the engine still strictly requires the hard, unglamorous mechanics of daily discipline to move the vehicle forward.
We have spent this deep dive analyzing how consuming endless inspiration can easily become a sophisticated form of procrastination.
Yeah.
And we've seen how the brain actively tricks us into feeling accomplished just for anticipating success.
It is a stubborn biological trick.
We explored the crushing reality of environmental inertia, the biological necessity of the 24-hour rule, and the necessity of anchoring behaviors through social pressure.
All critical components of real change.
But I want to leave you with a final inverse scenario to deeply consider regarding your own habits. We always focus on adding more information to our lives.
More podcasts, more books.
Right. But what if you deliberately stripped away all inspirational inputs for an entire month?
That is a terrifying thought for most people.
Imagine instituting a strict, uncompromising embargo. No educational podcasts, no motivational seminars, no business books, no visionary content whatsoever.
Total silence.
Without that external emotional soundtrack to constantly pump you up and provide synthetic dopamine, what underlying core drives, what foundational values, or what level of sheer, unvarnished discipline would be left to actually fuel your daily actions?
Stripping away the external stimuli violently forces you to confront the actual architecture of your character. It removes the illusion of progress completely.
It reveals whether you are running on a temporary sugar rush or if you have actually built the permanent muscle. The sugar rush of a weekend event is undeniably thrilling, but eventually, Monday morning arrives, the high completely wears off, and you are left facing the heavy lifting all by yourself.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Deep Thoughts Podcast. I hope you found insights and inspiration to take with you on your journey of self-growth. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated on new releases and exclusive content. See you next time, where we'll continue to help you grow and explore your full potential.